Now, here are a couple of examples of raising and handling multiple unrelated exceptions and using the exception group. Now, if you look at the way these boxes are, here the fonts are different, here it's different because for some reason the exception group did not work in the Jupyter notebook, so I had to use a different IDE for this, and therefore this may look a little different than what we have been seeing so far. So what we have is a function f that does not take in any arguments, but then inside of this we have a variable excs that has a list of two groups. First is the OS error, second is the system error, and this is the description: error 1 for OS error, error 2 for the system error. And then we raise exception group that refers to the excs that we have. Now, when we call such a function, here's what happens. The first, we see that the OS error is raised, and so we see that here, and then we see that the system error is raised. So there were problems, so that's what we have. There were problems, and with these two, then we have these two listed right here that are part of this exception group. Next, here in the previous case, we did not have any except blocks or try catch or try except when we called the function f. But here now we have put it inside of the try block, and we are now trying to handle the exceptions. So the way we are doing that is in the except, we are saying exception, and inside of the exception, we have the print caught this, we are saying type of E, which is the variable name and the error. So when we run this group, we see that caught exception group, and that's the error we have. So this is the way in which we can handle the error. But then the point to note is that we do not see inside of the exception. We do not see the OS error or the system error. Just see the exception group. And so what we can do then is we can specify that like so. If we have nested groups, in this case, we have the function f. Now this function has one exception group, which is this one, and this is the main exception group right here. And inside of this exception group, we have another group. So this is group one, that has this value, which is this list that goes from there to right here. And inside of this, there are two items. There's this item, OS error 1. Then there are three items actually. There's the first one, there's the second one, and the third one is another exception group that's inside of this outer exception group. So we have three things going on, and within this inner exception group, we have two errors: OS error and recursion error. So there's several things nested. So exception. So here we have this exception group, and inside of this we have a couple of things, and then we have this another exception group listed inside of the outer one. Okay, and so when we put a try except around this, so we put the function f in a try block, then we have two following except clauses. The first one is OS error and the second one is system error. Now the beauty of these statements is that we have a star after the except, and that kind of helps to um, kind of get this individual level information of the exceptions. So we say except star OS error as E, and we say except star system error as E. So what happens is when we run the code, the function gets run, we raise the exception, and the OS error gets handled here in this first block, and we see in the output there were these OS errors, so that's what we see. Next, the second except clause handles the system error, and so we see that written here. Then we still have the recursion error. So we still have this another exception group. remaining, and inside of this the OS error is already handled, so we are good with that. However, we still have the recursion error that was not handled, so that's mentioned here. So that's the group 1, that's the outer group, inside of which we have the group 2, and inside of the group 2 we have the recursion error which is not nested. So that's what we would see in the output in the traceback, the exception group traceback. And here it's shown by nice indentation for how the exception groups are nested. And here is another example. What we have is uh, again dealing with the exception groups. Here we have a for test in test try test dot run, and then we have this exception as e. What this does is what we are doing is we are taking the instance and appending it to this list excs. And what it's important to use the instance, because when later on when we are trying to raise the exception group using that list, we see that that traceback the name error right here. So exceptions are nested in an exception group, must be instances, not types. And that's what the idea is here. Uh, uh, the nested exceptions nested in an exception group must be instances. So E is the instance that we are referring to here, that we see here in the uh, traceback, where we have the name error and the name test is not defined, because we haven't defined tests anywhere before in this particular code.